I don't have as many videos because I like to release a video when I have something to talk about that I find to be really special and worth the time, worth the investment in looking at it, looking it up, and maybe auditioning it. So this is direct from the Closer Acoustics website about this little speaker, the OGY. It's Closer Acoustics' first bookshelf loudspeaker. It presents very natural and a very detailed sound with a 3D soundstage. Optimal for smaller rooms, however, when carefully placed in a bigger room, it can create an extremely pleasant space for an intimate music experience. Classical or jazz is able to convey a true sound, very involving, non-obtrusive, and allows for listening for hours with zero fatigue. These can also be used as a near-field loudspeaker. You fill up my senses, come fill me again. So I've been listening to these little OGY speakers from Poland for a few weeks now, and I have to say I've been very, very pleasantly surprised, even with the lack of the extreme lower bass. Yeah, these are not bass monsters by any stretch of the imagination, because these are little teeny speakers that are really meant for a small to medium-sized room. Now, my room here is 13 by 18. I consider it pretty small and intimate. And the OGY speakers, after some placement experimentations and some amplifier experimentations, I found a sweet spot here in the setup with them that had me addicted to them and listening to them for hours on end with certain kinds of music. So that's the thing with this little speaker. First of all, let me say, I've heard a ton of bookshelf speakers in my life, from big expensive brands to inexpensive brands, and I have speakers in-house now that are bookshelf. I think I have 5 pairs ranging in price from $300, I think all the way up to around $8,000. And these little guys fit in at around $1,600 US. These are sold direct from Closer Acoustics in Poland. They arrived to me in a matter of days. It didn't take long at all. The packaging was exquisite. They were packaged actually rather perfectly and well protected, and you pull out each speaker that is enclosed in its own bag within the foam protective box. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, these speakers are made out of birch plywood, and the pair I have here have the oak veneer. They also sell these in white corian and some kind of black stone material that look really, really nice. They cost a little more, but this oak veneered version costs around $1,600 as stated. They come with a single coaxial full range driver. Now, this driver is only 4 inches. Think about that. A 4-inch driver, but it is handmade in France. It's really, really an exceptional sounding driver. There's no woofer, there's no tweeter. This is what you get with a coaxial design. One simple driver which excels at listening to those moments. It brings you the intimacy of the song, of the recording, the realism of the recording, the dynamics of the real recording. And I'm going to talk about what I heard, and I'm going to recommend some recordings to check out with these speakers that sounded phenomenal. Another thing, these are a transmission line design speaker. There's no crossover here because you're not dealing with multiple drivers, so they're pretty simple in the way they are designed. But sometimes less is more. Is that the case with the OGY?
You're like the sun, my whole world spins around you.
So these are not going to give you the room shaking, house crumbling down performance for rock, metal, or even EDM. But if you fancy yourself sitting in your listening space, whether it's day or night, but let's say night, I listen a lot at night, you dim the lights, you turn on your system, and you can have these artists, say you're playing jazz or some kind of vocals, right? You can have the artist in the room with you, right in front of you, in the most realistic way. And there is bass here. I don't want to make it sound like there's no bass coming from these speakers. They have a pleasant kind of full mid-band, but it's not overly done. You're not going to get those chesty vocals, but it's just enough to make the sound warm, inviting, and pleasing while providing some of the most intense and beautiful imaging I've experienced. I'm talking 3 dimensions, holographic soundstage. With some music, there's sounds that pop out in a 3D space. These are rated to 15 watts of power, meaning you don't want to overdrive these. You can blow them out. And Closer says they work really, really well with tubes. And matter of fact, they sell their own beautiful looking 300B tube amp that is said to mate with all of their speakers very well. Now, what I've had here on hand, I had my Daniel Hertz Maria, which is a 350 watt per channel powerhouse. These are 91 dB efficient, 8 ohms, by the way. So in addition to the Daniel Hertz, I also have the Choco Sound EMEI integrated here, which has a warm sound with plenty of bass. It also does detail very nicely. I compared that to the sound of a set tube amp when I reviewed that. I have a Black Ice F35 tube integrated, a Black Ice FX10, small little affordable tube integrated. I have a Yamaha RN2000 here, which is quite a few steps up from the RN1000 I reviewed. And I tried all of these with the little OGY speakers. And my 2 favorites, or I'll pick my top 3, what I have here that sounded really well with them. The Daniel Hertz Maria eked out the first place, even though it's a Class D 350/500 watt per channel amp. It just had the drive and the bass and the beauty to drive them to where they sounded room-filling and just absolutely gorgeous. I also liked the Black Ice F35. This is a beautiful tube integrated that's pretty affordable for what you get. I did a full review of it this year, and it's among one of my favorite all-tube integrated amps. I also loved it with the EMEI integrated. It provided a little more bass and oomph to the speakers, provided a little warmth. Love, love, love that integrated. So I found an amp or 2 or 3 that sounded lovely with the speakers. These can sound well with tubes and solid state, but not all solid state. I think that's why Closer recommends a tube amplifier, but hey, they sound beautiful with the Daniel Hertz and the EMEI. Now, positioning these speakers was a little tricky. They kind of, to get the most bass out of them, I had to put them closer to the sidewalls, but then I realized it was taking away something from the clarity and the holographic imaging they were providing. So I ended up settling on a space kind of in the middle of the room, far out from side and rear wall, where they could breathe. And when you set up a small bookshelf speaker such as this with one single source point driver, they have the ability to absolutely vanish from the room. And that's when it sounds like music is emanating from the air. And I have to tell you, listening to some of these songs through the OGYs was a magical, special experience. So these are the little OGYs. They have that small little coaxial driver. You can see how tiny these are. I'm moving around the room here, down at knee level. And here's the back of the OGYs. You can see OGY. Everything just looks beautiful. Now these speakers are well under $2,000, and they are well worth the money, especially if you're into vocals, piano, instruments, and hearing those instruments in a way that is just in the room. Such a beautiful, beautiful performance. And I like the fact that the owner, the designer, is such a passionate guy, and he's real proud of these, and he wanted me to hear them. And I told him I am addicted to these at this point in time. Not with all music. Bass heavy music or metal or rock or even classic rock, they'll sound a little anemic. But when you get in that music that has just sweet vocals and an intimate presence, I have not heard anything finer. So I was listening to some music just last night, and I found an album that just haunted me and just enveloped me in the music, and it was so real. The piano, the vocals, the ambiance. And this is an album called Ghosts, right? And there it is right there. Let's see if we can get it focused. And I was just listening right on Spotify. I love Spotify. To me, it sounds just as good as Tidal and Qobuz. I have all three services. And I just always go to Spotify for the discovery, for the little bit more plump, warmer sound that it provides, in my opinion. Really, really nice sound. But this album, Ghosts, from Hania Rani, and I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right. It could be Rainy, Rani. I've heard a lot of her music. She just released Dancing with Ghosts with Patrick Watson, whom I enjoy. But I listened to this whole album, and it was just so beautiful with the OGY speakers. And this is the kind of music that these really, really excel at. And I mean excel at a level of some speakers that cost way, way more money. And all you're missing is that really deep lowest bottom octave. So again, you're not going to want to listen to hard pumping, thumping kind of music through these. They will sound a little anemic. But throw on any 40s, 50s, or modern day jazz, anything with trumpets or horns, anything with piano. Now, it can reproduce the weight of a piano, right? And it kind of caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting that kind of weight. And there was one song where it ended with a deep piano note and it just reverberated through the room. It was really, really beautiful. I also listened to, let's see what else we have here. Tarantula from Beck. It's on this soundtrack here, the Roma soundtrack. Again, it opens up with Beck's vocals, and when it hits the chorus, it just fills every inch of the room, and it sounds so big, and it makes these little OGYs sound absolutely huge. They sound massive with this song, and it shows that if you're in the right room and you have them set up just right, they can sound beautiful. Now, this is a song, it's not acoustic, it has instrumentations, it has bass, but nothing was missing really when listening to it on the OGYs. If you like instrumental or guitar space ambiance, right? I forgot what it's called, where you have the reverb layers and all of that going on. Check out a track called Ritual from Maneli Jamal. This song will, again, make all the notes sound like they're floating in space in your room. Beautiful, beautifully done recording. And with the OGYs, it's almost like this is what they were made for. Now, I put on some other music. There's a band that I just discovered on Spotify. And I'm a guy that likes all music. I have a very eclectic taste in music. Almost all music genres I can enjoy to one extent or another. But this was an interesting, weird album. It's an all metal album, but there were tracks on it that didn't have the metal grunt. And here's one called Alone. Now, the name of the band I'm going to try to pronounce is Numenorian right here. And this track is haunting, and it sounds amazing on my Daniel Hertz Amber system, but with the OGYs, just a little bit of a smaller scale. So we get the realism, and that's another thing these speakers excel at. You can hear every little detail as they were recorded, and it's presented in a way where you hear those details where they're supposed to be in space. So if you can live with the limitations of you're not going to get that slamming, room-shaking, window-rattling bass, if you want perfection in the treble and the mids and that beautiful vocal region, and that region where most of the music lives, in the mid-range, I have not heard a finer speaker, I think, of this size than the OGY. And I'm talking about a passive speaker you hook up to an amp. It just has a beautiful, natural way that the music pours from these little teeny drivers. I can highly recommend these. You can check these out at Closer Acoustics. They sell them online. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to check out their website. And I want to thank them, Closer Acoustics, for sending me these out for review, because they would have never been on my radar. And that's something I like to do on this channel. Instead of just bringing you everything that gets released and saying, here, look at this, here, look at this, I don't have as many videos because I like to release a video when I have something to talk about that I find to be really special and worth the time, worth the investment in looking at it, looking it up, and maybe auditioning it. I believe they offer an in-home audition, a return trial period. You might want to check that out at the Closer Acoustics website. They also sell larger speakers that look beautiful. They have a bass stand, a passive bass stand they made for the Augies, which I would love to hear. But as is, these are really beautiful speakers. Now I'm using them on some Falcon acoustic stands I've owned for years, and they're doing really, really well. So I hope you enjoyed this look at the Closer Acoustic Augies. They've really opened my eyes as to what a well-made, handmade little speaker with a really fine driver can do. I'm really loving these source point designs, some of the finest audio reproduction I've heard with the ambers and now with the little Augies. So if you have a small to medium-sized room like me and you want to have an intimate performance with a speaker that will touch your heart and soul, take a look at the Augies. I'll see you guys next time. Thumbs up and subscribe. I love you all. Hope you have a nice rest of your week.